and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland preview show. Sunderland began their season with a positive opening day draw against Coventry City at the Stadium of Light, but will travel to Bristol City this week hoping that they can go one better and get our first 3 championship points of the season. It's been approximately 5 years since the famous Bristanbul game at Ashton Gate, and Sunderland, and myself, if I'm honest with you, will hope that this Saturday is something a little less dramatic and a bit more straightforward and a win. And to help me preview the visit of Bristol City is actually a returning guest previously on the show to give us the lowdown on Lee Johnson a couple of years ago. It's a man who's covered Bristol City for a number of publications over the years. Welcome back to the show, Gregor MacGregor. How are you doing? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
I was having a nice listening back to the previous podcast we've done. We will come on to it, but things have changed. I think we'll start from the top. We drew 1-1, feeling quite positive on opening day. Bristol City fell to 2 late goals, one particularly late goal, and a 2-1 defeat at Hull. How was the performance?
It was like we'd never been away, to be honest. It was, in some respects, carrying straight on from last season, and a few of the problems that we saw from a Bristol City perspective. So it wasn't, in some respects, too much of a surprise what happened on Saturday. But at the same time, it was a heartbreaking loss, because I think it was possibly the latest goal in the Championship of the weekend, 93rd, 94th minute winner for Hull. And Bristol City were winning in that game as well. They were 1-0 up. And like any fan, naturally, when you go 1-0 up, I think most of the time you think, right, we should see this out, or we should at least get something. Although over the last sort of 18 months, as a Bristol City fan, you kind of have realised not to get your hopes too high on that. And duly, the team let the lead slip. Although probably the big talking point from the game is that really the major incident on the day was a really disgraceful penalty given. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was a proper shocker. I think Dean Whitestone was the referee, and there was a foul. Have you seen the penalty incident?
No, I haven't. I actually haven't, to be honest with you.
Basically, there's a foul on the edge of the box. Cal Naismith just sort of stretches out, and he just catches Benjamin Tete, substitute. A really, really minimal contact. But the point is that this striker, the Hull City striker, he then takes like a step or two before going down. If you honestly, if you get a chance to see it, you'll not disagree. I promise you, because it's one of those decisions where you see it, you just think, how is the referee given that? There was the most minimal contact. He takes a couple of steps, then goes down. It's like the sniper from the stands, goes down in installments, as they say, as the cliche goes. And even then, when he goes down so slowly, and you can tell that the players are apoplectic on the pitch. And after the game, Nigel Pearson was pretty angry about it. And unfortunately, you get those decisions in the EFL, don't you? They come around every so often, and Bristol City were unfortunate to get a shocker on the weekend, and it did bring Hull back into it. And otherwise, that game looked like, basically had a 1-1 draw written all over it. Both sides had pretty equal chances and pretty equal shots. Hull had a bit more possession, a couple of extra shots blocked, but in terms of big chances, they only had one extra big chance, and that was the penalty, as discussed. So really, a 1-1 draw would have been fair, but unfortunately for Bristol City fans, it was an opening day defeat.
We were really hopeful that the referees were going to be far better than League One, and then we got one game in, and I think whilst it didn't sound that our referee was that bad, he wasn't necessarily that great on Saturday. So I think the EFL has a problem through all of the tiers. I think, like I said, I was listening to the show we did last time, which was vastly different. It was during COVID. It was something that just appointed Lee Johnson. But I was thinking from a Bristol City perspective, for quite a while, Bristol City were a side, especially when Lee Johnson was there, that wanted to push in and around the playoff places, and unfortunately it didn't happen, but they were definitely top half. Now, looking at, since we did speak, obviously, I think you finished 17th last season. Not great from where you were at, which wasn't that long ago. Has things changed? Has expectations changed? Why is Bristol City fell sort of out of that potential playoff push or those sort of teams?
It's kind of been basically it really hasn't ignited since Nigel Pearson has taken over. And he's been very clear that he wants his own men in the club. And it's a classic case of regime change going on at the moment. We've had obviously the Lee Johnson era, and there was a CEO, Mark Ashton, who worked above him, and then Dean Holden took over. But Dean didn't really change too much, and he was obviously Lee Johnson's right-hand man. So all of that and the squad that they built has been sort of slowly replaced by Nigel Pearson's vision and bringing in the side that he wants. He's been very open about saying that a lot of the players here can go, and they've managed to get rid of some, but not all of them. He wants to bring in new signings. He's done that slowly. But at the same time, he hasn't achieved the results. There's been very little consistency. It took until about October, November time last season for our first home win. And that was coming off the back of some horrible form the season before, when really Bristol City only just avoided relegation. And then, last season, as you say, they finished 17th. And it's kind of weird how it panned out that the season, that they never really got involved in the relegation dogfight. They always seemed, and this is a credit to Nigel Pearson, they always seemed to get a result when they needed one, just to keep themselves out of that. And they picked up a little bit of form towards the end of the season, where they finally achieved back-to-back wins, only for the first time, with about a game or two to go. And they finished 17th when really 18th or 19th looked on the cards. And their problems are well documented. They can score goals. They've got a very good attack. Only 6 teams scored more goals than them last season, and 3 of those were promoted. So goal scoring has not been a problem. It's completely the other end of the pitch. They had, I think, only 2 or 3 teams conceded more goals last season. And our big hope is this way, that they've brought in Cal Naismith, who looks on paper to be a very smart signing from Luton. And he did play very well last weekend. And he's looked good in pre-season as well. But he gave the penalty away last weekend. And we're hoping that that's just a freak incident, and he's going to help them to sew things up at the back, because they conceded, I think, 77 goals last season, and if they do that again, they'll basically be threatened by relegation.
You touched on Cal Naismith there, someone who we sort of know from his time at Wigan. I obviously know from his time that he's had up in Scotland at various clubs. I think he came through from Rangers originally. But I think, and I don't know if this because we've been in League One for that long, and pretty much every team has like an annual turnover of an entire team, and maybe it's less so in their Championship. But it seems like a fairly quiet window by Bristol City standard. 4 or 5 players came in, all of them free transfers, all of them loans. One of them you touched on there as well. Are we expecting more players to come in, and does more need to be done based on the first game? Sorry.
You're right. It's been a pretty low-key summer transfer window, but I think in the fullness of time, I'm hopeful that actually some of the business they've done this summer, they will actually prove to be the makings of the next team that maybe can get back into mid-table at the least, or challenge in the top half. And Naismith, I mean, I think he was Players' Player of the Season at Luton, and he's arrived on a free transfer. Kane Wilson's a pretty smart pickup, League Two Player of the Year, and they've basically got him on a free, but had to pay training compensation to Forest Green Rovers. They've got a France under-21s goalkeeper, although he's arrived with a broken hand and is yet to play. And Mark Sykes, who actually played very, very well. He's possibly their man of the match actually last weekend against Hull. And he's arrived again on a free transfer from League One. A few question marks over whether these guys can do it in the Championship, apart from Naismith, obviously, who's got good experience at this level. But it's maybe more that they've actually decided on a tactical system that they're going to use. And this is how they'll set up for the Sunderland game. They basically are now wedded to a 3-4-1-2 system. And we saw that switch take place last season. And again, this is maybe part of the reason why Nigel Pearson wasn't able to get consistency. He didn't know what his best side was. He didn't know what his best tactical system was. now he does. He's got there's certainly sort of 5, 6, 7 names who are definitely going to play week to week, and he's got this, as I say, 3-4-1-2 system that he's now going to be using every week, and they've recruited specifically for that model. You got Kane Wilson who's come in. He's a specialist right wing back really, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does. And yeah, we're hopeful that basically the what they've done so far this summer will actually turn out to be good business in the longer run. In terms of further incomings, I think, and basically Nigel Pearson has kind of hinted this himself, that they're not, well, they haven't got much money to spend this way for a start, and they've been trying to lower the wage bill for certainly this and last season, which is why in part we've seen results go south as well, because they've lost some good players. They've been very unfortunate actually to lose Nathan Baker, who picked up 2 concussion injuries in a short space of time, and he's basically been ruled out already for this entire season because of that. And they're carefully assessing him. It's not too. There's some doubt as to whether he'll actually even come back and play again. And yeah, off the back of losing some senior players and reducing the wage bill, it's part of the reason why things have gone a bit backwards here. But yes, they're looking at loan players. I did a story on this yesterday, actually, myself, that and Nigel Pearson sort of spoke in depth on it to BBC Radio Bristol recently, that he's inquired about several loan players. I'm sure that one of those will be a central midfielder, and they're hopeful of bringing in 1 or maybe 2 before the end of the window.
One of those players I saw linked, because I actually read that article, to be completely honest with you. Elliot Anderson, who obviously had a good season last season at Bristol Rovers, got them promoted. Chance that he could come in, play championship football. He's obviously coming in from Newcastle, but it looks like if it is players that are coming in, it's going to be loans, and it's going to be Premier League loans. Are we expecting any of those potentially to come in before the weekend?
No, well, not that I know of or we've heard of this way. It sounds like if anything's going to happen, it's going to be towards the end of the window. And Nigel Pearson's comments on the subject were that basically he'd made inquiries on several players and that they were still being assessed by their Premier League clubs. I think one will be a central midfielder. It's funny you should mention Elliot Anderson. He has been linked with Bristol City, and I that one, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if there was something in that. I don't know if there is myself, but I did watch Elliot Anderson. I had to report on Bristol Rovers a couple of times last season myself, so I've seen a bit of him, and I was actually at their game against Scunthorpe when they won 7-0 on the last day of the season, and he was absolutely outstanding for Rovers. Nigel Pearson has got some good links with Newcastle United, having been assistant manager up that way, and yeah, I wonder if there is something in that one. He could add something in the final third, and I believe he enjoyed his time in Bristol. Somebody had said to me that he'd had a good time in Bristol, and he wouldn't be against returning this way. So yeah, maybe one to keep an eye on there. But yeah, not expecting anything to happen before this coming weekend, and if anything does, it might be not until like the final week, when basically managers in the Premier League decide on their final squads and let certain young players out to get more first team chances.
You touched on a couple of sort of sentences ago about the home form, and it's funny. It's like I'll be openly honest, I haven't watched the Championship for years, and the reason for that is we've been in League One for far too long, and before that we were in the Premier League for a decade, and we just parachuted through it. One of my abiding memories of the Championship is Bristanbul. Apart from that, I don't know a great deal, but one thing that I did notice when I was watching just the highlights on, as it was Quest last year, was Bristol City's home form. And I remember, I want to say it was Norwich or someone at home that you played, and I think you were 1-0 up with like 10 seconds to go. They equalised, and they went, oh, that's now been 8-9 months or whatever it was without a home win. My facts and my figures might not be correct, but can I assume that home form has now been fixed a little bit?
It's getting better. It's a positive trend. Yeah, absolutely. We had to wait this way for for a home win until like October, November time. You're right. That what you say there could well be. The problem is that could be one of 6 or 7 games, because we had so many like that. Certainly, the very opening game of last season was Blackpool at home. And there was a really late equaliser. The biggest kick in the teeth was probably Nottingham Forest at home. They were winning 1-0. I think going into the very last minutes, they somehow contrived to lose that 2-1 at home. And there was a lot of boos from the stands after that one. And it's been a problem of Bristol City's that they've conceded far too many late goals. And we saw that again last weekend against Hull with Jean-Michael Seri's 93rd minute deflected goal. Okay, bit of bad luck because it was a deflection and went in, but unfortunately it's a bad habit that this Bristol City side has got. I know Nigel Pearson, well, he's obviously very angry about them conceding so many late goals, and he's desperate to try and rid that from the team, and he hasn't managed to do it so far. And it's something they're working on. In terms of you mentioning Bristanbul there, the game, and that game sticks out in my mind. I was there for that match, and actually wouldn't rule out something similar happening again, because this City team can score goals. They've got Andy Weimann. I think only 2 players were involved in more goals than him last season, Dominic Solanke and Alexander Mitrovic. Chris Martin, we all know he's one of the Championship's greatest goal scorers over the years. He's got that pedigree. They've got Narky Wells, who can't even get in the team. Got a couple of young players who are threatening to do something. I was going to mention about Antoine Semenyo, who you guys will know. Obviously, unfortunately, he's injured at the moment, and I don't think he'll be involved this coming weekend. But we've got high hopes in this way, because he really took off last season, and he's starting to really fulfil his potential. And there could be a few goals, but unfortunately for Bristol City, they could well concede a few too.
Funny you mentioned Semenyo there. I was kind of racking my brain last night when I was sort of setting up the questions to ask. I'm thinking, ex-former Sunderland and Bristol City players. And I got as far as Martin Scott, and you've just completely blown me out the water with Semenyo, which maybe shows how forgettable his loan move was to Sunderland. But to be fair to him, there was a pandemic, so I'll let him off. Talking of connections, we can't go past this. We've mentioned his name already. Lee Johnson had just been appointed last time we spoke. He was obviously replaced by Dean Holden. It feels like forever ago that was the case. But before we go into sort of Lee Johnson, which I think we need to do, Dean Holden didn't last long, and then he was replaced by Nigel Pearson. Now, Pearson was often linked to Sunderland at one point, with Kevin Phillips as assistant manager, was really strongly muted. And I think a lot of people kind of wanted that because of his reputation as a bit of a stickler, and we thought, maybe that would help us get out of the division. As it was, Alex Neil was always the man that was going to do that. But you touched on it before, he hasn't really took off for Bristol City. How are the fans finding life under Nigel Pearson?
They've definitely been divided. If you go to matches this way, then last season there were a lot of boos after games, and chiefly because of the results. The fans would say the performances, but without a home win for a long time. And his record when he first came in was something like 2 wins in the first 13 games. Then we went into his first full season last year. And as I say, long time before we got the home win. We didn't see back-to-back wins until right at the end of the season. It's been forward. The club's moving in a forward direction under Pearson, but very, very slowly, almost glacial kind of pace. And that pace is difficult to swallow, because at the same time you see people like Steve Cooper come in and bang, he's got Forest from second bottom of the league to promoted. We've seen Huddersfield go from sort of fighting in relegation to the top 6. So it's difficult to take this way. But the only thing for Pearson is that he is getting the club moving in the right direction, albeit slowly. The other thing is, and I can see this from talking to him during press conferences this way, is you're right, he is a stickler, and he's got these principles that he's going to abide by. And it's what he's doing is you can tell he's putting in the foundations for something. It's just whether he's going to get that time to see it all through. And by way of example of that is when he came in, he brought in sort of 2, 3, 4 players, people involved from his time at Leicester City. Now, these are guys he obviously knows very well, he trusts, and that's a big thing with him. It's got to be people that he trusts. But it's been evident that these guys really haven't been good enough to propel Bristol City further than sort of bottom half of the Championship. Danny Simpson was pretty disastrous. He's come in. It's been proven since that he wasn't good enough to, unfortunately, to play at this level any longer. So he went in the middle of last season mysteriously, sort of basically left his contract. With Andy King joining him this way, he didn't do very well last season. He's been retained this summer, maybe surprisingly, but he's doing a bit of coaching as well. There's been some backroom staff who have joined, Nigel Pearson from Leicester as well. And he obviously wants to get these people in that he knows, first of all, but it doesn't always work out. And at the same time, he has put in some good recruitment, but it's just too slow going. And if he did go to a Sunderland ever, then I would expect him to do things in the same way. And you've got to give him time and investment. And these days, with supporters wanting instant success, and unfortunately, that you can get that with the right managers, right head coaches coming in. It's difficult to sort of balance up.
We touched on Lee Johnson there, and I said we were going to come on to it. I suppose, in a sense, he's going to have no impact on the game, but it seems like a wasted opportunity not to do so. I think for people unaware, obviously, you did quite a long feature interview with him sort of during the summer. I think before he went to Heathrow, around the time that he went, obviously that's something I watched and we've discussed off air, but you chatted quite extensively his time at Bristol City, obviously, and also extensively his time at Sunderland. And I said before, it's quite funny listening back to our podcast that we did, because almost everything you said about him came true, which is maybe where my frustration came in with Lee Johnson, that I felt he'd never learned from the mistakes he had made at Sunderland, let alone at Bristol City. But when you spoke to him, obviously I've listened to this, but what did you make of his time from at Wearside from afar? And when you did speak to him in the summer, how did he reflect on his time here?
Yeah, as you say, I spoke to him in the summer. He got I'd sort of retained a few links with him from his time down this way. He lives in Bristol still, and I know he's around the city. He gets spotted a lot by football fans this way. And I did that interview, and we did speak about his time at Sunderland, and I got the impression from him that he was actually quite proud of some of the work he did there. And obviously he's got the cup win with you guys, and he didn't have anything. He didn't have any silverware on his CV before Sunderland. Obviously, he got Barnsley, I think, to the final of the JPT, but he left to Bristol City before the final, I think, if that's right. He obviously managed to win that trophy with you guys. And I think he feels that a bit like it's almost like I was saying with Nigel Pearson there, that he feels like he maybe put the foundations in and got built a large part of that squad really that got you guys promoted, and I feel like, and I do from his point of view get that as well. I think he probably does deserve a bit of credit for the promotion season, just a little bit, because I think you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but wasn't Ross Stewart his signing in the summer, and some of the other guys he's brought in, obviously can't go without mentioning Bailey Wright, who was a bit of a fan favourite this way. He didn't always perform the best for Bristol City, but he's a very dependable defender. Might have mentioned this on the last podcast even, that he basically missed out on one of the former World Cups because of injury, and that was because he played through injury to help Bristol City at the time. And going back to Lee Johnson, and I think he's hurt that he left the club when he did. You might have seen in that interview, he hinted that there was something amiss there, I think, saying that maybe it wasn't always results and performances related. I briefly spoke to Jamie McAllister one time as well, and I know he was angry at basically when the timing of them leaving Sunderland, and they felt that they could have got the club promoted last season. Whether that you'll know better than me whether they actually did have a real chance or not. And he's obviously moved on, and will no doubt retain a lot of affection for the area.
Yeah, and I think you touched on the players he brought in there. Ross Stewart indeed was his signing, as was Alex Pritchard, two players who arguably were our best last season, if I'm completely honest.
I was just going to mention on Pritchard, I know that's a funny one, because I know Lee was a big fan of his, and I know that I think they were, and spoke to a couple of people. I know that they had a move lined up for Pritchard to come to Bristol City before Lee Johnson left here. So yeah, he's a guy that he was intent on working with for quite a while, and they'd sort of lined up to possibly come to Ashton Gate, but obviously he left the club and he eventually moved to join up with you guys at Sunderland.
And he's been great so far. In terms of the game itself, like I say, I think ourselves, we were largely very happy with the draw on Sunday. Really disappointing that, of course, we conceded late, but I think we would have took that result beforehand. So we head to Bristol in confident mood, or certainly I do. How are Bristol City fans viewing the game?
There's so much annoyance of the way that last weekend's game panned out, but most of it directed at the referee. I probably didn't make this point well enough before, but they did actually play some very good stuff at last weekend, certainly in the first half, and they probably deserved their lead and created some decent chances. They've still got work to do to limit the opposition. I could see it being close next weekend. It's the first, obviously, home game of the season this way. They've got a big crowd in. I think they've sold something like 24,000 tickets. It might be a lot more come the weekend, and that's going to be not too far off a full house this way. Certainly one of the biggest crowds I've seen for a while. There's a lot of optimism, despite them not spending any money in the summer, with the players they've brought in. They just seem to have recruited well in the right positions and quite shrewdly. And so there is a lot of optimism this way that things might be on the turn. I think City fans Bristol City fans probably think that there's a chance that they can get a home win this weekend and basically right last weekend's wrongs. But from a professional point of view, an objective point of view, I'd be a little bit worried that we're going to see what we've seen too much of last season, where there was a lot of home draws and certainly late goals conceded and sloppy goals conceded. So I would say from a Sunderland point of view, you guys will have a chance at the weekend, I feel.
I think in terms of what you've said about the defence, that's probably music to our ears, because to be honest, our strongest position is probably our front four. Your Ross Stewart, your Patrick Roberts, who obviously didn't play on Sunday, but might come back in, Embleton, Pritchard and Jack Clarke, who have scored. So maybe I'm setting the question up here perfectly, but which of the players that you think, yourself and Bristol City fans are going to be worrying can do some damage to your team on Saturday?
Well, I like all those four players. Obviously, Ross Stewart's got a good goal scoring record, and I remember watching Patrick Roberts over the years for England youth groups, and I know Lee Johnson's was a big fan of his as well, actually. And he's got a bit to prove maybe, but he's certainly got some ability. I saw obviously Jack Clarke got the goal, didn't he, last weekend, and he's a player I've kept an eye on a bit as well. I know he's got some ability. He's good in one-on-ones. And then, Pritchard, as we were discussing before, he's that sort of small, diminutive playmaker type player who, again, Lee Johnson almost built a team of those guys this way. We had about 6 or 7 in the team at one point of sort of diminutive playmakers, and they probably then couldn't defend as well as a result. So hopefully you've got a bit more balance to your side. I'm sure you have. And I could see any of those guys doing well at Ashton Gate. Our hope this way is that Bristol City have got a kind of settled 11 at the moment. They've got a couple of injuries, as I mentioned before. Semenyo is probably the big one, because at times last season, you might not want to hear this, but he really was unplayable. He was just outstanding against Fulham, absolutely destroyed that defence. And Fulham, who romped the league, and yet Semenyo was the best player on the pitch on the day when we went to Craven Cottage. And they've got a settled defence at the moment, who on paper look very good. They're probably just missing Thomas Callas, although he was in full training yesterday. So there's a slim chance that he could come back in for Bristol City. And if he does, I think he'd make quite a big difference. So that's one possible team change to look out for on the weekend, because otherwise it means Zach Finer will be playing. And there's a few question marks over whether he can eliminate the sort of individual errors from his game that we saw last season. It's going to basically be an interesting battle, and whether the likes of Matty James and Joe Williams can keep an eye on those sort of attacking midfielders that you mentioned there. That's probably going to be a key part to it.
Seen that about Carlos coming back, and I think it's probably a name that Sunderland fans will recognise. Obviously, former Chelsea academy player, I think, and obviously spent time at Borough, i.e. a lot of championship experience there. So hopefully he's not fit, for our sake. Anyway, last week I did my first prediction. I'm terrible with predictions, and I said 1-0 was my heart and 1-1 was my head, and then I went with my heart and said 1-0. If I'd just gone with my head, I would have had my first prediction right for the first time ever on the preview show. So I think it's fair to say I'm not very good at them. I think I got 4 and 5 right in the 2 previous seasons over the whole time. So I'm not even in double figures. So whatever I say is not going to be, but I'm going to go for a 2-2. And I'm going to throw the same question at you just to end the show.
I'm going to go for a 2-1 to Bristol City. And what I'm going to explain my reasoning for that is because we've got Keith Stroud is the referee for the coming game. And Bristol City fans really dislike Stroud. They think he's possibly one of the worst referees in the Championship. I can't remember an actual game that he refereed them really poorly and gave a lot of decisions against them. But there obviously have been some this way because the fans really dislike him. But coming off the back of last weekend's awful refereeing from Dean Whitestone, I just feel that Bristol City are due a good decision. They haven't had a penalty for yonks down this way, absolutely yonks. I think we got maybe 1 or 2 last season. But beyond that, you're going back months and months and months. I think City have had the fewest in the division for a while now. So I just wonder if they're due for a bit of luck, if I'm honest. And maybe at home, first game of the season, they're going to have the crowd on their side, at least initially. And they have shown a few good signs in pre-season, which I know is obviously means sweet FA. But so I just wonder if luck is on their side and they might just nick it 2-1. But we'll see.
Before I do let you go, Gregor, I think I failed to do this last year, and I think a lot of people mentioned to me that they like to see the opposition's viewpoint when it comes, obviously, after the matches, not just the Sunderland viewpoint. Please listen to my review show first and foremost. However, if someone wanted to hear something from your side after the game or just follow you throughout the season, where's the best place to get your stuff?
Or just keep an eye on my Twitter feed, probably at GMacG, GEE Mac, GEE, and you'll see inane ramblings about Bristol City on there.
Gregor, lovely catching up. I wish you no luck on Saturday as part of the course. But thanks for joining me again, as always, mate. Appreciated.
Absolute pleasure and good luck for the weekend.
Thank you very much.